Welcome to this special 100th show coming to you from the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. I'm Jim Fleisig. During today's show, we will discuss IT success stories at numerous government agencies and hear from the key leaders making them happen. We will be doing the show in 3 segments with 3 different groups of federal executives. With me in the first segment of the show today are Dave McClure, the Associate Administrator, Citizen Services and Innovative Technologies at GSA, Rear Admiral Robert Day, the Chief Information Officer, U.S. Coast Guard, Robert Carey, the Principal Deputy Chief Information Officer, Department of Defense, and Margie Graves, the Deputy Chief Information Officer, Department of Homeland Security. Let's talk about some success stories around town and some things that are going on, folks. Let's start with you, Dave McClure. Tell us about perhaps a business problem or a mission goal you've set out to achieve and one that you feel has gone well.
Good. Well, first of all, Jim, congratulations on the 100th show. That
Thank
in
you very
itself
much.
is quite an accomplishment.
Thank you very much.
And a success story. And thanks for having me here. I think the thing I would focus on is our cloud security program that we've put in place called FedRAMP.
Right.
As we step back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we were first introducing cloud into government dialogue and government priorities, the one underlying factor that was really causing consternation was the security of cloud-based solutions. So putting a program in place that admittedly probably has taken longer than what we were thinking it would, but nevertheless has put together some solid foundation. I think we've changed the paradigm on how we not only assess security for cloud, but probably in the future how we'll assess security in general for all federal systems. Yeah. We've moved, I think, to a trust-based, standards-based environment with flexibility, with room to grow, with responsiveness to the new push toward continuous diagnostic and monitoring techniques. And one that I think over the last year and a half shown by the fact that small, large, big name, small name companies in the cloud space have actually gotten FedRAMP certification, that it's a model that's working and I think will bear a lot of efficiencies for us down the line. Certainly it's been an interesting experience from my perspective. It really has emphasized for me how much leadership is part of getting this work done.
Yeah, big challenge. With
a lot of players in this space, both on the Intel, DoD, as well as civilian side. Mm-hmm. And even though FedRAMP is largely focused on the low and moderate risk systems at the moment, it still takes a tremendous amount of teamwork to pull off something.
So everyone just doesn't get in the room and agrees right away what to do there?
Not exactly. So I think, you know, for me, as any executive in government would tell you, the success of any kind of program like this really is dependent on just relentless execution and focus. There are a lot of times where you want to walk away. It just seems like there's no solution. And we have to get in the room. We have to work these problems out, and we have to move forward. And I think that's really what we can attribute a lot of the consensus building behind FedRAMP is that we had a lot of those kinds of discussions. So I'm happy with the progress that's been made. I'm really optimistic about its ability to deliver very secure and very, very high quality cloud programs for the government.
Right. I'll tell you, you know, having been there myself trying to do government-wide things, I understand some of those tough challenges, things you've been through trying to coordinate that and you know, the time frames. Let's realize we've been through some tough budget times and sequestration, so I think what you've achieved has been remarkable. Anything you'd pass on to other IT leaders as a little lesson learned maybe that come out of here that could help them down the road?
Well, you know, in IT, you're never done, you're never finished, and we're not finished with FedRAMP, won't be, and don't pretend to be. It's constantly, you're constantly thinking about the business requirements of government and how this solution not only technically addresses security, but how it's delivering cost-effective solutions for the mission owners in government. So I think part of the lessons learned here is understanding that it's a constant and evolutionary quality improvement approach you have to take to any program in government. the moment you think you're done, the moment it stops, is when you really need to be focusing on what is changing in the environment that causes the program to be updated and to really address the changing environment we have in IT, because it changes every single day.
That's excellent advice, and appreciate all the work you've been doing on this. It's certainly something that we're all real proud to see happening. Rear Admiral Day, let's talk about a business problem or a mission goal that you set out at Coast Guard that you feel like you've really made some progress on.
Well, Jim, as I say, I spent some time looking back over the last 4.5, almost 5 years of being the Coast Guard CIO and trying to find what was that one thing that really seemed to make a big difference. Yeah. And it's not the things that we've been talking about in previous shows with mobility and data center consolidation. They're all great. The one I look back and say has had the biggest impact from a business standpoint is the creation of a centralized service desk. Literally, we had 9 regional desks throughout the Coast Guard servicing all 48,000 people. And as a part of an FY11 budget and efficiency initiative, they were looking to find a way for me to save some money and maybe improve service. And so we went about to create one centralized service desk for all of IT throughout the entire United States Coast Guard. One of the things we found out pretty quickly is we could leverage ITIL processes, brand new voice over IP systems, as well as an excellent trouble ticketing system, and really revamp the business process so we understood more what was going on each and every day out there in the field. Standardized processes such that the user experience, whether it be in Seattle or whether it be in Washington, D.C., are identical, and we could set those targets out there. And so we went apart about this process, and it's a cultural change where instead of just going down the hall and seeing your local help desk there, now you're calling to where our location is in St. Louis, and experiencing this new process. But the thing that we've found is it now gives us the data to make much better decisions. I now know that I can solve most problems about 30 to 40% without touch labor within 2 hours. Wow. And if I put more people on, I can actually see the metrics go back and forth and see what happens.
Can I call your central desk when I got problems at home, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, if you'd stop downloading all those things, you'd be better off. But again, it really revamped the business process behind it. And it's been so successful that other organizations, not just the IT organization, are looking at it to become their first-tier help desk, whether it's a personnel record, whether it's fixing engines on our boats, whether it's the aviation. They're starting to move into this business line. And that was the vision I had going out. Just a quick story that goes with it is I said, look, this is a marketing campaign, and we need a good 1-800 number. And they kept bringing these phone numbers to me saying, how about this one, boss? And every single one I said, nah, this is terrible. They finally said, what is it? I said, see if 1-855-CG-FIX-IT is available. And they said, fix IT, that's marvelous. I said, no, you're not thinking big enough. It's fix it. And that's where we're driving this, is to be the first point of contact, no matter whether, whatever service line it is, because now we have the systems in place, the training in place, the metrics in place, that other business units can take advantage of it. And they are. They're coming each and every day asking about whether or not we can take them on as their frontline help desk.
Build it and they will come.
And in this case, they have.
Yeah. Now, how about some challenges and lessons learned along the way?
Well, the key challenge there is communications. Just as, I think all of us technologists agree we can handle the technology piece quite well. It's the cultural changes and the communication processes that you need to put into place.
This is our 100th show, and that's the 100th time someone mentioned culture change being one of the biggest challenges as opposed to the technology itself. So we are now 100 for 100 on hitting that topic. So
and we can keep stamping our foot on it every time because it's not necessarily a technology problem. It's a business process or a cultural issue.
Yeah, terrific. Anything you pass on to your peers around town as to suggestions for programs of this magnitude?
Again, I think the key part is understand your customer, understand their processes, and then really try and work with them to align technology with the business process. And if you can't do that, then the business process needs to change.
Right, and I like it. Fix it. Very well said.
I also reserved buy it, so I can go to centralized buying as well.
Very good. Rob Carey over at DOD. Rob, tell us a little bit about a business problem or a mission goal you set out to accomplish that you feel like you've made great progress during the year.
So, good question, and lots, but the biggest one is really We took advantage of the budget challenges to sort of be this catalyst for change in consolidating and standardizing our network infrastructure into this joint information environment. That's a lot of words to really say, how do I get the DoD on the same sheet of music as we move forward and keeping the warfighter in mind? So the opportunity presented to us was the trifecta for a CIO, efficiency, effectiveness, and cybersecurity, all coming together. And the fact that the budgets were going down allowed us to now drive in standards, use Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Fourth Estate inputs to now come up with a design and an agreement to move forward with the Big E enterprise in the sites, not previously, my world as the enterprise. And so, things like cloud, things like FedRAMP, things like mobility, things like, there's every facet of our world is fitting into this way ahead, which is a redesigned DoD network infrastructure, not unlike what the Intel community is doing with iSight. Matter of fact, they're very linked. But we are really transforming the network infrastructure. We're on our way. We have a great deal of support and buy-in from the deputy, the secretary, the vice chairman, the chairman. The people that need to push are now behind pushing an IT issue, which they view as absolutely central to national security in the 21st century.
Terrific. And how about some challenges maybe and lessons learned for you along the way?
So I'll use the culture thing. The culture of control.
Yeah.
Exists in our world.
Boy.
And so convincing people to take their idea and expand it to the 3.6 million members of DoD is hard. There was a great deal of consternation ongoing, and whether you centrally fund it, whether you decentrally fund it, how would you operate in this vein? But we're actually moving ourselves consistent with the budget into a future that I think will better serve this country.
Terrific. Well said. Well said. How about some advice that maybe you'd pass on, things you've learned through this process that you'd consider passing on to some of your peers, maybe to help them be successful with some of their programs?
So two things, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate.
Okay.
When people don't feel like they're part of the answer, then they're part of the anti-answer, right? They will push back until they're sufficiently part of the answer. And then one of the things that I've sort of told my staff, if you have the power to answer or ask a question, you have the power to answer it. Let's talk about the answer and getting it right, not talk about just ask hard questions and then walk away. So the idea of making people answer their own questions helps you stop asking mundane ones and get into
tremendous advice.
And getting into asking really meaningful questions, because now I have an answer I want to put forward.
Right. One thing that used to frustrate me as a manager is people would come in and lay a bunch of problems on me, but no solutions. And I would say, well, this is your job. Okay, I understand you have a problem, but what are you going to do to move us forward here? And I'll be happy to talk to you about this, but when you come in, let's talk about how we're going to solve the problem.
When you ask people, answer your own question, there tends to be silence. And you say, no, really, answer your question. Yeah. I want to hear your answer.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Another excellent program. Proud of all the achievements there, and thanks so much for all the effort you're putting into this to move the programs forward. Margie Graves, Ms. Graves, let's talk a little bit about Homeland, and you've had an interesting year, and acting roles and so forth, and leading, and I would guess we talk culture here. I'm just guessing there might be some culture issues at DHS from time to time, getting things together. But tell us a little bit about this, a business problem or an issue or a mission program that you're proud of for making some progress with the past year.
Well, Jim, what I'd like to talk about today is our DHS Next Gen strategy, which really is about effectively adopting the most current technologies into our enterprise computing environment and allowing our mission app developers as well as our operators to build upon those environments. And we've been very successful in areas like cloud computing, in areas of adopting mobility, particularly working with the digital government strategy and understanding that we have to set standards for security and establish those baselines in order for people to develop those environments of trust, particularly in FedRAMP and in mobility, the 9.1 baseline for mobility security. We've done that. We are adopting those standards going forward, and it's enabling us to actually put product on the ground. Okay. So we've probably put close to 15 cloud services into production. Some of those are with the GSA contract, and they are commercially based, and others are, of course, within our own firewalls in our DHS data centers. And what that's enabled us to do is we've set up infrastructure as a service, dev test as a service, even code testing for mobile apps. It enables some of our components to come into those environments, to have it all laid out, ready for them. They can adopt the security posture, and they can just get to market faster in terms of mission delivery. And that's very critical for us. That's one part of our next-gen strategy. Another part is, of course, working at the data layer to understand our data, to label it, to tag it, to make it searchable, to assign attributes to it, and then use those attributes to be able to take identity management, which is the other part of that equation, assign attributes to individuals, and to combine those two elements to be able to effectively share data, not only within DHS, but with our federal partners across the landscape, and state and local law enforcement, et cetera. Those are just a few of the areas.
Yeah, I know that identity question we talked about a lot. If we can solve that identity management issue, it just opens up a whole new world of opportunity to do a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Now, how about some challenges along the way? We talked culture here already, and I'm guessing that...
we have a little bit of that with
a little bit of that.
Yes.
How about some other challenges and lessons learned along the way as you tried to put this all together?
Well, we spoke a little bit also about collaboration. I think the biggest success story that I would center on as we've implemented this strategy is the fact that we collaborated with our customer, i.e. we came forward and we said, what's most important to you and what would be most effective? So that's what we're going to put on the ground. Then we collaborated on the standards, and that's not only within DHS, but that's also federal-wide. So for example, working with NIST, working through the digital government strategy to establish those baselines, to establish open data policies, all of the things that are necessary for all of us to center on the same page and to be able to move forward together and solve the problem once, quite frankly, and then just move forward.
Terrific. And is there any sort of advice maybe you'd like to pass on to others that are trying to be successful and bring home some successful programs across government?
Yes, I would say that your CFO and your CPO are your closest friends. You have to develop effective acquisition vehicles in order to be able to effectively deliver these technologies, and to do that in a rapid fashion. For example, setting up drawdown accounts. If it's not easy for your customer to get to you, and this is also part of our lessons learned, because we certainly experienced this along the way, if it's not easier for the customer to do business with you, then the frustration level will push them elsewhere, even if you've got a good product. Right. So it's product delivery as well as effective business models. How we buy it, and then how we fund it, and then ultimately how we move forward in terms of the futuristic business models. Right. So for example, we're not going to be buying license agreements going forward. We're going to be buying solutions.
Absolutely. Buy results.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. Well said, Margie. And, really great stories from all of you here. I just have a couple. I jotted a few notes along the way. I heard as challenges the culture issue, and I heard communication being critically important. Something I heard from all of you, you may not realize, but all of you talked about looking at the results from the point of view of the customer, the end user, which I think is so important in IT these days. You know, it's what a novel idea. If we want to know what the user wants, let's talk to them and ask them. So I heard that. I also heard the fact that the other thing that makes me sitting here proud of all the accomplishments you guys are doing and things is that it's been a tough year. There were no money, less people. And I think when you have no money and less people, it forces you to be a little bit more creative and innovative if you're going to make progress. And the fact that you have all made such tremendous progress under such tough budget times and tough budget constraints, I think is commendable. I also understand that the complexities behind these things, and it's exciting to hear that things like most of them, FedRAMP, which is government-wide, centralized desk, which is serving an entire Coast Guard, enterprise programs, supporting all of DOD, and next-gen programs supporting all of DHS. I think that clearly shows some real leadership and some things that all of you should be very, very proud of accomplishing during these tough times. So I want to thank you all for being part of segment 1. We're going to take a break, and we're going to set up for our segment 2 in the show. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. I'm Jim Fleisig here. We're doing our special 100th anniversary show coming to you from the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. With me on segment 2 during our show today are Joe Klimavicz, the Chief Information Officer at NOAA, Donna Roy, the Executive Director, DHS Information Sharing Environment Office, and Dave Bennett, the Chief Information Officer at DISA. We're talking about profiles in excellence. We're talking about programs that have gone well this past year. Joe, let's start with you. Let's talk about a business problem or mission goal over NOAA that you set out and feel you've made great progress on this past year.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Sure. Again, thanks for inviting me, and congratulations on celebrating your 100th program.
Thank you very much.
As NOAA Chief Information Officer, I have another title, it's Director of High Performance Computing and Communications. And I'd like to focus and talk a little bit about high performance computing.
Sure.
It's something we don't talk a lot about in these events. But we have two basic flavors of supercomputing in NOAA. Operational supercomputers that generate about 15 million products a day to give you your weather forecast. And we have research and development supercomputers that basically push science. So they're improving the models that will eventually transition over to operational forecasts, weather, climate, et cetera. And when I came to NOAA in 2007, we had an extreme shortage of computing on the research and development side. And so what we've been able to do over a number of years, and it really all culminated last year, was to lay out a strategic plan, a strategy for how to improve and where we wanted to take and how we wanted to transform our research and development supercomputing. We laid out a one NOAA supercomputing strategy in 2008. And this really, what we wanted to do is evolve it from lab-centric small computers in each of the labs, each of the centers, to remote computing, shared computing, and holistic contracting approach.
Wow.
So just jumping to the chase, in 2013, we ended up with a 20x increase in supercomputing on the research and development side for NOAA researchers and scientists. And in 2013, it marked the first time in the history of NOAA that all of our business units were able to actually use supercomputing on the science side of things.
Wow, that is
so it is great. And there's still a lot of demand for supercomputing, but we've been also very creative about how we've done this. We partnered with National Science Foundation to use their computing on a shared basis as much as possible. We've partnered with Department of Energy down in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Again, sharing data centers, facilities. And one of the things that we did is we actually, I think this is probably the first time I've heard of this in the government, is jointly went into buying what at the time was the largest supercomputer in the world. Wow. Titan, about 25 petaflops of computing. And we're able to share, and we still are sharing that computing between Department of Energy and NOAA to really push science.
Wow, when you talk big data, it sounds to me like...
big data, big compute.
Yeah, big data. I mean, I like the way terms come about. I like the way cloud came about. I like big data. Big data is just a lot of data. I mean, it's got to be a whole lot of it, so we call it big data. But the fact is, you, in reality, at NOAA, I think... Now, what are some of the benefits you're seeing from the results of this? What are some of the benefits that are accruing to the American public or to NOAA itself?
Well, I think on the research side, where we've been focusing on is better seasonal predictions, particularly in precipitation. Precipitation predictions, including rain, snowfall, snow melt, river flows. They're crucial informations in terms of being able to manage that, to get the information out, where rivers might be flooding. Also, in terms of drought management. We've also made significant improvements in looking at our oceans. We run coupled models, Earth systems models, where the atmosphere and the oceans, they're coupled. And we're able to look at the food chain in the oceans And I think this could also lead ultimately to improved aquaculture in terms of fish productions and fish yields. We've also made significant improvements in air pollution sources, identifying those, what that means in terms of environmental change, and a better understanding.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, terrific. See, I don't think a lot of people understand. I mean, a lot of people don't know the mission of NOAA. They understand how some of these programs translate into what they mean for the country.
Absolutely, and one of the things we've found is that it's all connected together. It's not just about the United States or the U.S. or North America, that pollution sources in Asia impact U.S. environment, and
Right.
et cetera. So it's all tied together, and we've been able to run much larger models, much higher resolution, and
Terrific.
it's given us good
Fantastic.
results.
Thanks. Boy, that's exciting stuff. And any lessons learned you'd pass on to your peers here quickly? Anything you would mention that you learned along the way that you think is worth repeating?
Well, I think collaboration, communicating, sharing. I'm real big on sharing, and I think being bold. If you can imagine it, then go do it and give it a try.
I like it. I like it.
I think that it's one federal government. We ought to be working together on these really
There you
tough
go.
problems.
If you want to explore new lands, you got to have courage to lose sight of the shore. Donna Roy over at DHS. Let's talk a little bit about what I know is way back when the HISN program, it was like ready to be buried. Now I'm hearing the HISN program is wonderful. And so I'm not even sure if that's what you're going to talk about today, but I know your name was connected to it. But tell us a little bit about a business problem or that you set out to accomplish, and maybe something you're proud of making progress on.
So thank you for inviting me here to talk about
Sure.
The year of HISN,
All right,
which was
see,
2013.
Thank you for bailing me out there and actually
Yes.
talking about it.
What we set out to do with HISN was, you're right, it was on the chopping block at the federal IT level, and certainly for a lot of good reasons. They were trying to do tech refresh in maybe a way that wasn't supportive of an enterprise strategy. But more importantly, the program, they weren't listening to their users, and the users are very vocal and very connected. So I think if you look at HISN today, so let's just look at, did you watch the Super Bowl last year, right?
I sure did.
You sure, I did too. And when those lights went out, what were you wondering?
Well, I was at that Super Bowl. What I was wondering, what the heck's going on here, you know?
So I immediately jumped online where my team had a platform ready for the 20 agencies to get together and talk about what was going on, whether it was a terrorist threat or not. Was there something happening in the maritime environment? Was something happening in the New Orleans festivities?
Right.
Or was this something else, right?
Wow.
And so all of that happened on HISN. And the big change in HISN was that would have not happened 2 or 3 years ago because people hated using the platform. There's a lot of people either hated to use HISN or just hated to use HISN. It's really where we were. Mm-hmm. Now people are jumping on it. The Boston Marathon, the recent shooters, people are jumping onto that platform for real-time collaboration. It's a platform the state and locals feel like they own. They are the users. They're using it in a way that helps us keep the homeland safe. And so it really has been a big turn. It's not a perfect program, for sure. It's federal government IT, right? We're not perfect. But we have changed the posture program, and we have a really solid foundation behind strong identity management that allows us to increase sharing in a very protected way.
Great. And what do you think some of the challenges that you overcome to turn that around? What were some of the drivers that, got it from going from dying to being something now that has continually gained support?
We invested in people. And I think that was the big difference. It was a team of people that brought this together. When we took over the program or provided management and oversight of the program, there were maybe 4 or 5 feds. There are 22 feds. So we put the right people in the seats to provide management and oversight. We recompeted all of the contracts. We took lead everything in the program. We held an operational program up with Band-Aids. Mm-hmm. And created a new one. We migrated 40,000 users, a terabyte, not petabyte, just a terabyte of data, much smaller than yours. And we changed the reputation of the program. And we did that by the federal employees being in front and taking ownership and being transparent about what was happening.
Yeah, and some of the big challenges were just the turnaround to get the collaboration and communications?
The challenges really are in federal government IT. You know, it's hard to do IT. You talk about the survey saying it's the worst place in the world to work, DHS, right? And in the CIO's department, we're sort of near the bottom. I don't believe that. I go to work. The people I work with are dedicated. They work hard. They put in extra.
You know,
I think it's
about
in investing
that,
in people.
I think the biggest important decision you make every day is when you wake up out of bed and you put your foot on the ground, you say to yourself, am I going to have a good day? And if you take the attitude I am, you'll have a good day.
Yeah. So we spent the time almost breaking bread with our users, understanding what they needed and giving it to them, and then really strengthening and investing in the people who were running the program.
And some key lessons learned along the way, things that you would like to pass on maybe as advice to others that are working on similar kinds of programs?
Sure. Try not to break all of the China at the same time. And so we were trying to do agile. We're also trying to sort of apply new standard SELC approaches during the same time as we're trying to recompete all of our contracts and hire all new feds and keep a system alive and produce new capability. We were able to do that in the 18 to 24 months that we rolled out the program, but I would say it caused a lot of stress and a lot of small miracles had to happen.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't try to do it all at once.
Yeah, no, that's very good advice. I think a lot of times, sometimes new folks come in and whatever, and they want to accomplish so much so fast, and you wind up either doing a lot of things not that well, or you don't make progress on some things that are really, really high priorities. Everyone used to always say, let's do more with less, more with less. I used to say that's not right. What you really have to say is, let's do less with less, and let's do the less things we do are the right things to do.
So we listened to our users about halfway through migrating to the new system. They said, slow down. And we said, what do you mean? They said, slow down. We need a little more time to adjust.
Good.
And we slowed down.
Terrific. Terrific. Congratulations.
So I think it's breaking bread with your users. Great.
Congratulations. Great story of a major turnaround there. Dave Bennett, over at Chief Information Officer at DISA. This is obviously has a tremendous mission in and of itself. But tell us a little bit about a business problem or a goal or something that you've set out to do and you feel real good about where you're at and the progress you're making.
Well, first, thanks for inviting me, Jim. Appreciate that. And also, congratulations on your 100th show.
Thank you very much.
Major milestone. Well done. I want to talk about what we're doing right now. I was thinking about the various things that we have on our plate to do and the things that we're doing. And one of the things that really comes to mind is as the department is moving more and more to consolidation, the consolidation of data centers is a key piece within DoD. It's a scenario that is affecting every service, every component, all the way down almost to the desktop, if you will, from an end user perspective. And so one of the things that we have, and it's on my plate, is from the DISA perspective, how do we consolidate data centers within DoD? DISA was given the mission to provide the core data centers for DoD, and with the mission of migrating end user applications that are out there in the services into the core data centers. A pretty monumental task if you think about it when you look at all the services and all the variety of applications that are out there. And so how do you establish core data centers? How do you build them so that they're redundant, they're reliable, et cetera? But more importantly, how do you structure it in a way so that you are easing the implementation and the migration of the capabilities into the data centers so that it's a process that runs smoothly and that it has the capability that the end users and the system owners are looking for. And so what we did was we spent a lot of time looking at what is needed, and we really came down to starting with the simplistic idea that let's look at providing infrastructure as a service as a core offering that is the foundational element that allows us to virtualize everything going into the data centers. We can maximize our footprint. We can maximize the use of the IT and the capabilities that are there, and do it in such a way that we provide a standardized platform for all of these disparate applications to fall in on. It was the only way to do that in a way that was going to be timely, cost-effective, and really ensure that the performance and the capabilities that those users have come to know, it was going to be there after they made the transition. But we all know that everybody has their own pet IT capability, their own pet solution, their own pet operating system. So how do you come up with one solution? So we basically said, if you're going to be moving to the decks, we're going to define what that standard is.
Right.
And we're going to define it up front, and we call this thing MilCloud, which is our virtualized infrastructure. And we have published, we're in the process of publishing all the standards as well as the rate structures, et cetera, for this standardized offering, so that everybody that has an application that's moving to DoD has a cheat sheet, if you will, in front of them that says, here's the technical details, here's what you're going to fall in on, here's the communications infrastructure you're going to have to leverage, here's the capabilities, here's how you can scale the capability out beyond just a particular footprint, and at the same time, do it in a way that is, I won't call it inexpensive, but I'll say it is competitive with industry in terms of providing IT infrastructure as a service. And then do that in a way that leverages all the investments that we've made over the years in our security infrastructure at the enterprise computing centers, so that we have a redundant and a consistent way of applying security measures across the architecture. And by doing that, we really are bringing everything together in one place at one time, and give a consistent way for these application owners to move their capabilities into an environment, understand what they're going to get, understand what the support structure is, the IT infrastructure, the security infrastructure, and be riding our DISA backbone for high-speed communications across DoD.
Right.
And this is being done worldwide, so it's not just in one location. It is at all of our enterprise computing centers that we have there in DISA.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we've talked for years about getting the folks, the program folks and the people in the field to stop worrying about IT. And it sounds to me like what you have with the standardized, almost like a menu offering here. Here it is. You make your selections, we'll put it in place, and you can use it to meet your mission objectives.
Absolutely.
Now, how about challenges for you and maybe some lessons learned along the way?
So challenges is getting people to divest themselves of the box hugger mentality. It won't work unless it's sitting under my desk. Right. So that's one thing. But I would say really one of the more important things was the cost aspect. When you work in a working capital fund, you have to basically recover your costs for everything. And so how do we provide a capability that is inexpensive, recovers all of our costs, but more importantly, we get compared to things like Amazon Web Services and commercial offerings. Right. And so everybody wants to compare what is DoD doing to this scorecard coming out of Amazon that's, nickels on the dollar, so to speak. Right. So our challenge was to meet that scorecard that comes out of Amazon. And I will tell you that we briefed the DoD CIO a couple of weeks ago, right before Christmas, and we gave her the cost for this infrastructure that is comparable with commercial cloud services. Terrific.
Great, great points, great lessons. Again, great stories, folks. We heard about the supercomputing strategy, and that partnering and sharing was really impressive there, as reaching out and working with all those other agencies in order to pull this all together and make it all happen. It's quite an accomplishment. And Donna Roy, the turnaround on his in the fact that people now, instead of running away from it, they're actually turning to it. And on things like the Super Bowl, now I need to tell you, I was at that Super Bowl, and my wife was hungry, and we went back to get something to eat, and there was this big red switch on the wall, and she said, I wonder what happens if I push this red button. But it's good to know that in reality, what you had is the fact is that when these things happen, there is a tool now that federal, state, and local entities can go to do the collaboration. And Dave, just remarkable. I'm sure the complexity of the challenges you face at DISA are overwhelming, and the fact that you're pulling off all this consolidation, the infrastructure as a service, getting the standardization in place to make these things go forward. This is going to rest well for not only for the generations here, but setting up for generations to come. So greatly appreciative of all the work you're doing. We're going to hear from another group of leaders here on some other profiles and excellence in just a few minutes. But first, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. I'm Jim Fleisig here. We are doing our special 100th show coming to you from the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. On our third and final segment, I have here with me on the show Rob Mancini, the Chief Technology Officer of the District of Columbia, Sandy Peavy, the Assistant Director and CIO at FLETC within DHS, and Kshemendra Paul, the Program Manager for Information Sharing Environment, ODNI. We're talking about profiles and excellence on the show. I feel real good about this, being able to talk about progress being made in various agencies. And it's nice to have someone representing a local flavor with us, Rob. So we'll start with you, Rob Mancini, over the Chief Technology Officer, District of Columbia. Tell us about a little bit about a program or a mission goal that you set out that you feel good about the progress you're making.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Congratulations to the Fleisig Group and
Thank
Federal
you.
News Radio on their
Thank
100th
you.
broadcast.
And the Trezza Media Group. Who
Yes, the Trezza Media Group too. We're honored and privileged to be a part of it. I'd also like to thank you for saving the best for last, the best panel for last for this occasion today. So I'm Rob Mancini. I'm the District of Columbia's Chief Technology Officer. The District of Columbia is about a 40,000 user enterprise, about 100 agencies. And I'll give you a little bit of a flavor for why that's a little bit different than some of my colleagues are. But I wanted to start off, before I tell you about a couple of things I wanted to touch on today. I wanted to give you a little bit of philosophy on public service, because I think it's one of the more rewarding areas for either a technologist or a worker of any kind to be a part of, especially if they come by it with a servant's heart and ask themselves every day, if I were hauled into court and accused of being a good public servant, would there be enough evidence to convict me?
Wow, I like
So that's how I try to approach my work on a daily basis, Jim.
Very good at it.
And I try to make that permeate throughout my agency.
Okay.
That keeps us focused and helps us understand what we're looking at. Technology is about half of the job, in my view. The other half is leadership, and I think these jobs are very hard. I've talked with a lot of my federal CIO colleagues. They're very good to me as a local CIO. And their jobs are as hard or harder than mine, of course. But I think the thing we really need to focus on is not being afraid to lead and to seize the opportunity to help those who are above us in the management chain to understand how to think about IT. And it's our job to help them apply that for business value. And that's the most important part of the job. It's great for us to be good technologists, and I think we probably all got here where we are by being good technologists, but we can't be afraid and can't hesitate to try to advance technology and help people to understand how to think about it as we ask for the funding for what we do.
So give us some example of where that has been applied to some programs.
Okay, I'd like to talk about what I call the invisible enabler.
Okay.
All the things that we talk about when it comes to cloud and big data and geospatial and mobility, the thing that enables those is a worthy technology infrastructure, and the worthy technology infrastructure starts with the quality of the network. I heard a couple of folks talk about it earlier. One of the Robs on the first panel talked about that as well. That's a particular success story for the district. Most people wouldn't know that we operate 600 miles of high-speed fiber in this city. We own and we operate it. So we operate our own telephone company and high-speed data services company. So that is an enabler of all of the application solutions and development that we deliver to the 100 agencies of the DC government. That is the enabler of our Cybersecurity Operations Center that we're going to be opening later this month. That is the enabler of a lot of the infrastructure services that we operate and that we sell through MOUs to our fellow district agencies. And a commitment to operating a worthy infrastructure like that enables you to deliver solutions for the residents, businesses, and visitors, and even federal colleagues in this city that most cities would only dream of. And I would like to tell you that the most important aspect of what my agency does is the way in which we operate DCNet. It has won a lot of national awards, and it really is the enabler. And it has become a center of excellence for my agency so that I can marry things like the security operation to a center of excellence like a network. And I've heard several of the other CIOs up here speaking about those types of challenges. You won't do mobility, big data, geospatial, or cloud without the infrastructure. And that's usually the last thing a cloud provider will tell you about. They'll sell you that service, but you've got to get there. And the extent to which I can make a phone call in 5 minutes and go from a 1 gig connection to a 10 gig gives me an enormous advantage. The other advantage I have is a very small boundary, which my federal colleagues up here don't have the
Right.
luxury of having, and that gives me enormous power to be able to
That's
bring
true. You do
business
have,
value.
You're bounded.
Correct.
And what are some lessons you learned, some things you would pass on to other leaders as to your experience here?
I would say focus on leaving whatever you inherited better than you found it, and think strategically in order to do that. And never hesitate to tell those above you that they really need to think a certain way about IT. For example, if you're being told you can't spend money on training and education for your staff, you need to say, well, okay, what if we invested a lot of money in these folks and they left? But what if we invested nothing and they stayed? There's an alternative to that type, and you
Right.
can't be afraid to look at that alternative and bring it back to leadership and help them understand. IT is something that requires continuous investment and improvement.
Right. Terrific. I like that. Get that infrastructure in place and then use it to build these other programs out. Sandy Peavy, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is a really cool place. You know, and I guess being out of town, people don't notice it as much, but I know it's, you've done some remarkable things down there. Sandy, can you tell us a little bit about one that you're particularly proud of and some progress that you made?
Yeah, Jim, I think what I'd like to do is kind of look at how we're using technology to develop some of the law enforcement training that is not only allowing the officers to better accomplish their mission, but is helping save lives.
Well said.
We've talked before that the #1 killer of law enforcement officers is vehicle traffic accidents. And we've talked about that we're using driving simulators now to help them. Not only, we were trying to train them to respond fast. Now with the driving simulators, we're using those to help them develop some of the cognitive skills they need to arrive alive. And I'll give you an example. One of the officers that just had our training, and he was virtually killed a couple of times, the day he went home, he got put into an incident, the same thing that he had just been in the driving simulator. He wrote back to us and said, "Thank you for saving my life."
Wow. Wow, cool.
The
and,
other-
and thank you, Sandy, for not using me as an example. I visited FLETC a little while back, and they put me in the simulator, and I think I killed myself as well as a lot of other people in that chase, but so thank you for not using me.
Well, one of the other things, the second biggest killer of law enforcement officers is in shootings. And unfortunately, in the world that we're in today, our active shooter program has become our #1 ask for training. And the Navy Yard shooting that we just had, the officer that took down the shooter had just been to our active shooter training. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but there was also a school shooting again today in Roswell, New Mexico, and three children were injured. And Roswell, New Mexico is like 60 miles from our training center, and we actually had staff that had children there, us and Border Patrol. So one of the things that FLETC is doing to try to help in this arena is we're partnering with science and technology. They have developed a new virtual world platform where they're training first responders together. So you think about it, you've got an active shooter, which we just had. You've got you've got injuries, and then let's throw a fire in. So when they all get there, who goes in first?
Right.
You got to train them like they fight, and you got to fight like they train.
Well said.
The thing that I'd like to leave you with, and this goes with Donna Roy, and we were talking about HISN, and it's one of the things I'm most excited about because we're the ones that are running toward HISN.
Okay.
We are partnering with HISN right now because Donna talked to you about the operational piece.
Sure.
Now let's take the training piece and put up there with that. So what you're going to get is a one-stop shop for cops. And what happens with FLETC, we get them very early in their careers. So if we can give them their gun, their badge, and a HISN account when they leave, then we have outfitted them with the tools that they need throughout their career to be successful and to bring them safely home to their families at night.
That's a great story, and leading with the fact that it's all about saving lives and creating that type of environment. That's well said.
You can also ratchet that up too, because that's not just for law enforcement, but for anyone that is training that has a mission to protect the homeland.
Right.
So it's bigger than law enforcement, but the law enforcement piece is the one that we're really pushing.
Terrific. Kshemendra Paul, I'm anxious to hear about your program at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. I mean, it's such a focus on that office in order to be able to, I mean, when you think of an office that needs to share information, intelligence, and something, I mean, that's sort of, you know, what we think of. So, and tell us about your leadership and some progress you're making, programs that you're proud of in terms of moving them forward.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, and congratulations to you and Tom. This is a great event. It's great to be a part of the series of panels and be with my colleagues. What I want to talk about is our information interoperability mission. If you do information interoperability right, you can save money, you can improve security and privacy, you can reduce risk, and really increase mission agility. We come out of the terrorism, homeland security, information sparing space, whole of government, but to make this work, we really got to work with the IT industry. So I want to talk about the problem that we're solving, which is how to better collaborate between the government and the IT industry and standards organizations. So we stood up a standards coordinating council underneath the governance, the White House governance I co-chair. This standards coordinating council is getting a lot of traction. It's been operating now for about 2 years. It includes ACT-IAC, IGIS, FCA, AFEI as industry organizations. As standards organizations, it includes the Object Management Group, Open Geospatial Consortium, and OASIS. We've been using the Standards Coordinating Council to provide a forum to coordinate our standards agenda and some examples of some of the successes we've been driving through this activity with our partners at DHS, DOJ, DOD, and elsewhere, and our state and local partners. We worked on aligning our core standards framework, the National Information Exchange Model, with UML. So now NEAM is available as a UML profile, mainstream approach. We also partnered, again, with our standards colleagues, federal government, with the Open Geospatial Consortium to drive something called GEO for NEAM. Better aligning geospatial information sharing standards with the NEAM and other interoperability frameworks, critical for further adoption in the, with, for example, the Department of Defense and
Sure.
other folks.
Sure.
Identity management frameworks, folks were talking about that earlier, critical to get traction on identity management. We use the Standards Coordinating Council with the NSTIC, National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, NSTIC PMO, to host a summit at the White House of all the NSTIC grantees and different federal program managers to help accelerate the identity ecosystem work that they're driving. Just a few examples of
Okay.
you know, where we're trying to drive a strategic agenda around standards. One last thing I'd highlight is the use of standards in acquisition, standards-based acquisition, sort of like strategic sourcing for mission IT. Leading example of this is the FBI's index. 8,000 police departments sharing records management information, things like suspicious activity reporting. Most recently, prescription drug diversion, #1 problem in this country, drug problem from a dollar value perspective. Folks use these frameworks to be able to standardize how prescription drug information is shared between the public health community, the public safety community. Those standards were certified through an industry-based process. The first vendors to go through that process were health IT vendors. You know, so it's really kind of getting to be pretty broad-based in terms of use of these frameworks. It's great to see that collaboration between the government and the industry through the Standards Coordinating Council.
Terrific. And I know, Kshemendra, we're real proud today to be donating some proceeds we got from this event, all the proceeds to the Wounded Warrior Program. And I know you mentioned to me that the DNI, you guys are doing something yourself. Would you care to maybe make a quick mention of that before we get ready to go to our reception here today?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We have a Wounded Warrior program in our office. My Chief of Staff, Nick Harris, runs it with volunteer staff in the office. We've had exactly 7 people through the program, Wounded Warriors. The goal of the program is to familiarize these, you know, our Wounded Warriors, proud veterans, with corporate settings, and to be able to get them help use our extensive network of contacts across the federal government and elsewhere to help them transition from service and through the healing process into industry. It's been great to see that. Great to be able to support our veterans that way. The program we've put in place has been identified in ODNI as a best practice, and it's being expanded now across all of ODNI.
Good.
So,
And some lessons learned from both the work and the program?
yeah, it's It's interesting. We're working at the heart of the terrorism-related information sharing space, really critical national security issues. But what we found is embracing open government techniques, transparency, participation, collaboration. It's as much about making government more effective as it is dealing with and sharing our information just, you know, in general with the citizenry. Right. So the transparency that we bring to our efforts really does accelerate them. The whole of government approach is bringing in state and local governments through things like the National Network of Fusion Centers. And we've actually done the hard work to embed state and local stakeholders into our White House-based governance. Right. So
terrific, great stories. But I tell you, this has been an exciting day for me. It's just real nice to sit and hear about all the good things that are happening around town for a change. And with this third group here, we heard a DC government focusing on the enabler, putting in place the enabling technologies that allow these other things to grow out, the DC Net being an example of that. From Sandy Peavy, we heard about focus on saving lives, and that's a real true to heart mission there when you're in a position to do that. And I think, and Kshemendra, of course, with the information interoperability and all the various things that can blossom from that, you know, in terms of moving information. And you mentioned Index and what that does in the law enforcement community to be able to get the bad guys off the street and make life better for. And you know, you listen to all these stories here and you think that it just drives home some of the points I think, Rob, you brought up and one of the other panels brought up about just what a privilege it is to work for the government, because just the kinds of things you can do impact millions and millions of people, and our generation and many, many generations to come are depending on the work and the good things that you're doing. So it's, we're real proud to be able to showcase some of this great work. I want to do some thanking here first to all the panelists that participated with us here today for taking time from your incredibly busy schedules to be here to do this with us. Thanks, of course, to all of our sponsors, without which we don't have a show. So thank you all for your support for the last 100 shows. We've been very, very fortunate to have a great deal of sponsorship and people enthused about it. Thanks to all the good people at Federal News Radio and WTOP who've been absolutely outstanding in supporting all of us. And by far and away, most importantly, thanks to all the listeners out there that listen to the radio show. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM.